The International Christian Embassy Jerusalem is your embassy in the heart of Israel, founded in 1980. From our headquarters in Jerusalem through our branches in over 80 nations and yours in Canada, we seek to challenge the church to take up its scriptural responsibility, to remind Israel of the promises made to her in the Bible, and to be a source of practical assistance to all the people in the land of Israel. On today's program, Theologian Malcolm Hedding discusses the history of Christian Zionism, the evolution of a fabric store in the Christian quarter of Old Jerusalem since before the birth of Israel.
What is the history of Christian Zionism? Well, Christian Zionism actually begins in the modern era, believe it or not, in the 17th century. So I'm giving you a history lesson tonight. I'm going to test you, Donna. Take notes. It begins in the 17th century with the arrival of the Puritans in England. The Puritans were very godly people. They were very austere, like some of the ultra-Orthodox, very austere. The Puritans were very dedicated Christians, and by the way, they were responsible for the 1611 version of the Bible, which is the most famous in the world, called the King James Bible. They wrote it. The Puritans are very interesting because their fervent belief in the Bible led them to a biblical Zionist position. And the Puritans studied Hebrew. They spoke Hebrew fluently. Did you know that? It's true. And they believed that for England to be blessed, anti-Semitism had to be reversed, and the expulsions of the Jews that took place in the 13th century had to be reversed. So, when Oliver Cromwell, who's heard of Oliver Cromwell? He was a Puritan. Who is Oliver Cromwell? He's the founder of modern-day democracy. Did you know that? Oliver Cromwell codified and purified the Magna Carta. Who's heard of that? And enforced it on the United Kingdom. Up until then, the Magna Carta had already been signed by the kings. What did the Magna Carta do? It took away the divine right of kings to rule. It put the hands of government into the hands of the people and the peasants. And although the kings signed it, hardly any of them introduced it properly until Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell had the king executed and brought in his heir, his rightful heir, and his heir agreed fully to the Magna Carta. Hence, parliamentary democracy in its modern form became a reality. And that's why you are in Canada. God save the Queen. Reverently speaking, she's a constitutional monarch. The Puritans were the founding pioneers of the United States of America. Not the founding fathers, the founding pioneers. And here too. And when they went there, did you know that they wanted Hebrew to be the official language of their settlements? Because they believed, without a doubt, that there would be soon on the horizon of world history a restoration of the Jews to the Promised Land. 17th century. In the 18th century, we have an incredible event taking place in the United Kingdom with the rise of the Wesleys and George Whitefield. John and Charles Wesley were Anglicans, but in the 18th century, they preached up and down the whole of the United Kingdom. Not in churches, but in fields. Sometimes 3 times a day to 10, 13,000, 15,000 people. Without internet, without microphones, without any of the things that we need to gather a crowd. They did 2 things. They saved England from the French Revolution. Secondly, they saved the nation from committing suicide because it was awash with drunkards who were drinking homemade gin. That's why to this day the British like their gin and tonic. What was interesting about the Wesleys, they were Christian Zionists. And if they were here today, you would call them that. They never had the term, they never used the term. But they preached about an imminent restoration of the Jewish people to the land of Canaan. And Charles Wesley wrote 5,000 hymns and poems. Did you know that? 5,000. Many of them were a call to the Gentile church to help the Jews everywhere make Aliyah to the promised land. The great Wesleys, Christian Zionists. Then in the 19th century, the foundation that the Wesleys laid in the Anglican and Methodist community spread throughout the country, and you had the arrival of the Restorationists. And these were full-blown Christian Zionists who in the 19th century had an incredible influence upon the British government. Some of them were very famous to this day. Charles Haddon Spurgeon. Who amongst you Christians have heard of him? Raise your hand. Let me see it. Who's heard of Bishop Ryle of Liverpool? Raise your hand. Bishop Ryle of Liverpool. Have you ever read his writings about Israel and the Jewish people? Unbelievable. What about Professor Jacob Janway? Who's heard of him? He came from the Scottish National Church. A great preacher, Christian Zionist, proclaiming, because he knew the Bible, an imminent return of the Jewish people with power. And then there was William Hechler. William Hechler was the chaplain to His Majesty's diplomatic corps in Europe. William Hechler, through his study of the Bible, believed that very shortly the nation of Israel would be established. William Hechler found common purpose with who? Theodor Herzl. It was William Hechler who introduced Herzl to the noblemen and statesmen and the kings and queens of Europe in the pursuit of his Judenstaat. William Hechler became a very close friend of Herzl. The first Zionist Congress was held when? 1897. Where? In the casino. I love it. In Basel. I've preached there. Wonderful. There's a plaque where I preached above me. It says, here, William Hechler, Theodor Herzl proclaimed the Jewish state. Wow. Of all those people who gathered there, there was one Christian was William Hechler, who termed the phrase Christian Zionist Theodor Herzl. At the end of the 19th century and into the early 20th century, the Restoration movement had penetrated the British government with Shaftesbury and all these people. It was because of the Restoration movement that the Balfour Declaration was made. There would not be a Jewish state today if it were not for the restorationists of the United Kingdom, because God gave into the hands of the United Kingdom the great obligation of paving the way for a Jewish state, because they were mandated over the area. Not that they did that perfectly, but they did it. And the restorationists were partly responsible, not fully, partly, for what happened. So that's the history of Christian Zionism. Now, its modern day history begins in about the 1970s, shortly after the Second World War. The Christian Zionist movement today, that is in its millions throughout the world, began in the early 70s. Actually, I joined one of the early Christian Zionist organizations in 1975. It was called Christian Action for Israel. It actually came out of South Africa, but very influential. In fact, if it wasn't for the leader of that organization, there would be no International Christian Embassy Jerusalem today, which is very interesting. And that guy's name was Basil Jacobs. Very interesting man, wonderful man, Basil Jacobs. The belief system of the Christian Zionist movement is interesting, and I really appreciated the rabbi's delivery today. He set the tone for what I'm saying. Christian Zionism has never been built on prophecy. So, though some think it has, incorrectly. Christian Zionism has been built on promises. It's not built on the future, it's built on the past, with the future in mind. That is, Christian Zionists believe that the land of Canaan is the everlasting possession of the Jewish people, and that Israel's modern-day restoration is evidence of God's faithfulness to his covenant that he made with Abraham 4,000 years ago. And like the rabbi, we believe there's a difference between political Zionism and biblical Zionism. We concur completely, sir, that a holy land is for a holy people, and that Israel is on a journey, as you mentioned, to understand her relationship with God. So Christian Zionism believes then that the restoration of Israel is no political coincidence. And it is for the nation state of Israel at present, because she is not a theocracy but a democracy, to settle her borders, to establish where she will be, and we will walk with her and support her no matter what.
Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Up next, a visit to a historic fabric store.
Hi, I'm here in the Christian quarter of the old city of Jerusalem, and I'm with my friend here, Abraham.
Yes.
Abraham, tell us about how long this has been in your family, your shop.
I'm third generation. My grandfather used to sell material, but not in a shop. It was in 1920 maybe, on his shoulder traveling.
Oh.
Then he bought a small shop down the street there. And then my father took the idea from my grandfather and stayed in the shop. And then he bought this shop in 1945, something like this.
Really?
And he make from this shop a lot of shops in Jordan, in Ramallah. Next door, it's my son. It was the same shop. And he used to bring material from Damascus, mostly. Because Damascus materials are more natural material and they have very good experience in textile.
Natural materials
Natural material like silks, like cottons, linens, mostly the folklore material that the Arab ladies wears for the koftan, the galabiyas, in the past time. Now I took the place because I was dead in 1985. I continue and I did it in a different way. I'm bringing more expensive Damascus brocade like what I showed you last time.
Beautiful
upstairs.
fabrics upstairs.
Expensive, but it makes the range of the shop up.
Yes.
It's called the museum brocade and all the old style material. I'm specialized really here in old style material, and I bring material which Israelis can't reach the country. For example, Syria, Morocco, Egypt I bring also, and sometimes India and then the other
Do you go to those countries, Abraham?
I don't fly.
To select? No. So you have
I'm
someone.
afraid of Dublin, yes.
So who selects your
I
fabrics?
go to Damascus by my car to Jordan, and then I stop in Jordan. I have a house there, and I will take a taxi. In Damascus, I know all the places because it's many times I went and they know my father, so I continue the way. In Egypt, I go also. In Morocco, we have an agent in Jordan, and sometimes in India, my son goes. And as I told you, we bring material where Israelis can reach. For example, all these types of material are Damascus made. Some are specialized for religious Jewish.
Oh, all right.
The koftans, the stripes, the talit, all these types.
Right?
Yes. And they need exact special colors sometimes. So we make it an order there, and we bring it through Jordan, and from Jordan to here. But these days we are bringing it through Turkey, and from Turkey to here.
I see. And some of your fabrics, they like them for interior decorating, for upholstery. A lot of the fabrics.
I have all
for
types.
upholstery?
One shop which collects all types of material. Women dresses, men's suits, furniture, cushions.
This would be a sample of suiting.
Suit,
yes?
men's suits, yes. It's from England.
But you have beautiful pillows. and
Pillowcases,
embroidered.
because
We bought
tourists
some here.
sometimes need something small, present, something like that. For example, this is an embroidery Bethlehem wear cushion. It's hand embroidery.
Bethlehem?
Yes.
Oh.
This is my work.
This is hand embroidered?
Hand embroidery.
Really?
My work of.
I have this in.
Yes, this is Damascus
yellow.
material, but I make it in Jerusalem. The sewing.
I
Shawls,
see.
pashminas are like that. This is from India. It's
Right.
an original. Many types upstairs. If you go, you can see most of a nice quality material. I'll try to bring more natural. I have some polyester like this,
Yes,
Far East, and this is for Eastern European people like Poland or Romania. They like these types. But more American and let's say South America and Israelis like these types of material, which is more natural, and they don't find it at home.
Right.
These types of things. So they want something unusual from what they see in other places.
Right. So what gives you the most joy about your work here over these years? You're right in the old
I'm in the old city.
Yeah.
I have another shop in Salahuddin, but I can't stay for an hour there because I lived here all my life. Here I speak English, Italian, all languages.
You do?
Yes. Because this street, it's only for tourists and locals and Israelis. So I speak without going to school. Just for English, I went to school.
You've picked up a lot.
I picked up a lot.
Really? You're a linguist from
Yes.
Europe without leaving your shop.
Without leaving my shop. So I try to speak German with German people, American English, and Romanian, and sometimes we are now trying to understand some Russian because of the Russian people.
Yeah.
And you can see here, you can sit here an hour here if it's a normal time. You can see 20, 30 nations are passing here. Chinese, African, Nigerian, American.
That's the beauty of the city.
This is the beauty
of the city.
of that I'm not trying to leave this shop to go another place because it's...
The world comes to you.
Yes,
yes,
this is the point. The world comes to this street. If there is a church here for the Christian, and a mosque for the Muslims, and a wailing wall for the Jewish, this country must have put Jerusalem on the shoulders and not fight for it and try to make it peace because it's, a very beautiful city.
And everyone can coexist here,
Of
no
course.
problem.
No
problem.
No.
Excellent. Is there anything you want to tell us beyond that?
I want to be peace here. This is what I want. I want the people to
You
come
want
again.
people coming by and...
I want the Israelis to come back here. I want peace. I don't want to see bad news. I close the television. I don't want to hear bad news. You can't eat. If you have dinner and you have news, you close it.
I know.
It's really a situation, but I hope it will finish. Everything has an end. And I mean, inshallah, I hope.
Winnipeg has a very large Jewish population, and where I lived, our neighbors, our next door neighbors, were a Jewish woman, her daughter, who got the Order of Canada for education, and they adopted John Hirsch, who started the Manitoba Theatre Centre, also got the Order of Canada. In my summers, I spent at Nudamik Lake in the White Shell with a Jewish family as my next door neighbors. So our summers were spent on the boat, cheating at cards that we both agreed in. And this Jewish friend and her family, I just thought that they were just normal people, like I was. And I wasn't a believer. And later on in my life, I did become a believer. I found out that Jesus was not just a name. He actually died for all of us, and that included me. And then with that was the realization that the Jewish people were not just a race, that they really had a purpose in life, and God had a plan for them, and I could become part of this plan. So then it was, how would I do this? And bit by bit, I became aware of ICEJ. And the more I became aware of them, the more I liked this organization because it was begun by Canadians. And we're a big nation with a very small population. And there were Merv and Merla Watson who conceived of this idea at the time when all of the embassies left Israel because of being forced out by the Arab nations. It was very political. And they realized that there needed to be an embassy in Jerusalem because Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and they called it a Christian embassy. And bit by bit, the different nations of the world, Christians in the different nations, decided, they wanted to be part of this too. So now there are over 84 countries that have offices to support this, and over 104 other nations in the world some are secretly supporting ICEJ. So I was just very happy to be a part of an organization that supported and comforted Israel. They did it with the name of Jesus Christ, and they left it up to the Holy Spirit to explain that, Jesus is Messiah. We conclude our program today with some sights and sounds within Israel.
עכשיו זה לא... סתם משהו ביתי, אבל סבבה.
In consideration of Canada's 150th birthday, please consider 150 ways to bless Israel through your Christian embassy, the ICEJ Canada. Consider becoming a $150 monthly donor. Plant 150 trees, 150 prayers for Israel. The opportunities are endless. Please contact us. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to visit our website at www.icejcanada.tv or call us at 1-866-324-9133. Through your contribution to ICEJ Canada, you can participate by giving to Haifa Home for Holocaust Survivors, Women at Risk, Red Carpet Project, Operation Life Shield, Bomb-Proof Shelters, Shoulder to Shoulder, Alias Support, Beth Singer Children's Home, Israel in Crisis, ICEJ Communication Media Fund, Christian Friends of Yad Vashem, Magen David Adom Emergency Services, Canada Israel Young Adult Scholarship, Equip and Teach, Bet Rachel Strauss Inclusive Community, Gift, Estate, and Securities Funds.